Welcome. I'm Debbie Rosas, and this is Get In. Yes, you're listening to a conversation about getting in to the body and getting into life. I'm founder and creator of NIA, an international body and life movement art experience for all levels, all abilities. Our topic today is something I am deeply passionate about: the human body and the experience of who you are in that body and how can you live and move in that body in meaningful ways by understanding a little bit about the form and the function. My guest today is author and a whole lot more. Wait till you find out. Joanne Avison. She's an international teacher of movement and manual therapy, teaches applied structural anatomy for movement and manual practitioners in a variety of fields, including yoga. You'll find out, as I said, that's something unique about her. She's passionate, she's artsy. She even has a love, as she says, for animating science and the mystery of the body so that everybody can move better. Who doesn't want that? Now, I got to tell you, I've had the privilege to do something that Joanne is so wise about. The word is fascia. I've had a chance to dive into that, put my hands on, see it with my anatomy teacher, Gil Headley, several times. And each time I come away thinking, I don't really need to tell my body how to move. My body is designed to move. It knows how to move. Matter of fact, my body is a whole thinking body. And every part of me, from my heart to the fascia, it knows how to think. So the more I understand, the more I can let my body move me. And all of this smarts, well, it comes from without having a need for a personal trainer. I find it magical that we somehow learn to walk without a personal trainer, which is what's always got me curious about the body's way, the design and function of the body. And what can we do with this knowledge to move better and, more importantly, feel better and live a meaningful and purposeful life, regardless of what life throws our way and regardless of what we may consider as a skill? So let me tell you a little bit more about Joanne Avison. She's an author and illustrator, specialist in that thing we're going to talk about, fascia, and not just movement, but myofascial movement and manual therapy. Well, honestly, I think that anytime we become conscious about what we're doing, we're applying a manual approach, a therapeutic approach to how we move. She has a second edition of her book, and it is fantastic. It's a must buy: Yoga, Fascia Anatomy, and Movement. And it precedes a new illustrated series, Myofascial Magic in Action. And Fasciategrity in Motion, the magical interference, the heart-centered embryo, and somatic archetypes. We're going to talk about all of it. So don't be concerned if you're going, what? What does that mean? We're going to talk about it. Through archetypal awareness, Joanne teaches how this fasciategrity redefines the unified nature of human form, and most important to me, self expression, that uniqueness of who we are as an individual. We all have a unique body and we all have unique movement patterns. And with some knowledge about the body, we can create healthier movement patterns. Joanne invites us to tune into ourselves. So go ahead and just tune into your breath right now. Smell the moment, become aware of where you are. Are you sitting? Are you standing? Become aware of your lower jaw. Just let it hang and relax. And become aware that there's not only something happening inside of you, but you're connected to something, this beautiful matrix outside, right? In to out, out to in, there's this oneness connection. An advanced yoga practitioner, as I said, Joanne, I think that really what sets you apart from everybody is the way you approach the art, the craft, and science of yoga and what you call the subtle body architecture. She's an ordained minister, my goodness, and a doctorate in spiritual science and study practice in restorative yoga, Sarachabad yoga, structural integration, sacral contacts. I could go on and on and on. If you're thinking, wow, this woman has a lot to share, you're absolutely right. Most important, she is really interested in not only the understanding, for example, of yoga and the philosophy behind it, but more importantly, how the being, the you that is inside this body, that animates this body, how do they work together? The you and the body, right? I always say the most important relationship you're going to ever have in your life is the one you have with your body. The most precious thing that you own is your body. So start looking out for somebody to fill it and fill it yourself. Joanne wants us to know something. That we self organize as embryos from the inside out. There are exquisite, conscious, fascial architecture. We remain whole and complete throughout our entire lives. I like that thought as we age. We remain whole and complete, and that we are always unique, always expressing ourselves as a living, self aware architect. Now, this is something to talk about. Is everybody aware? I don't know, but the body, there is a self inside the body that is always aware. That's the one we want to reconnect with. Joanne, you have this little story that you've told. When you were 40, you had to completely reinvent yourself. Many of our listeners probably can relate to what it means to reinvent yourself. You had a career as, I love this, a chocolatier. That is so cool. How you go from chocolatier to spiritual scientist, anatomist, I can't wait to hear the story. As an already established yoga teacher, passionate about helping people, you decided to, okay, hands on, manual, let me do something. And through that, you studied anatomy and archetypes. And I love how you say you learned to speak fluent fascia and fluent archetypes. Well, as someone that only speaks one language, English, I like to think that am body literate. I speak the language of a lot of body parts. I can never learn enough about the language of the body. I'm excited. You talk about two worlds, the interstitium, the interface of our architecture where spirit animates us, that unique spirit. I love the spiritual aspect, coming home to your body and never forgetting this alignment, this spiritual alignment that we have. Joanne says our unique expression, our soul essence forms the patterns of our matter, the matter of each of us. This is how we move and express the soul, the unique soul that we are. She teaches us through her work about archetypal awareness. She redefines the unified structure of the human form and self expression through what she calls fasciategrity. Most of us can understand integrity, but what's fasciategrity? Her research and discovery, well, it has revealed many secrets about the grace and mystery of the moving matrix fascia. Moving, everything is in motion, and how this plays very important role in her approach to spiritual science and anatomy science. Joanne, I could go on and on about you, but I want to welcome you and say thank you so much for joining me in this conversation, getting into it.
Thank you for having me, Debbie. I'm listening to all that thinking, who's that? Because I'm really just a very ordinary person with an amazing life history that I've kind of been invited to put together in certain ways. And I'm just so grateful for that opportunity because it thrills me. But what happens is it can enhance everyone's experience of themselves and what they're doing. It's not about following a way. It's about listening to our conversation, and thank you for such a beautiful introduction. It's really about finding that sense, and I'm sure you've had it when you hear something that you might be learning something, but you might also feel a sense of confirmation.
Yeah.
And that means somewhere within you, you already know that that's actually true. And so you're not necessarily adding loads of facts. That's great. That's really interesting. It's really useful. But it's what I call the intellectual aspect of what we learn. And yes, we have to do that to pass our exams, to be able to practice, to gain all these experiences. But when we've done that, we pull together something that animates us individually, right? And we have that instinctive knowledge that we have to encourage because that's in present time. The intellectual stuff's historical and we need it. We lean on it. But our experience of movement in the classroom is right now, right?
Yeah.
So we want to find a way of accessing this information that gives us a sense of, I think, curiosity rather than overwhelm with facts and data, but at the same time allows us our own individual journey because your way is your way and my way is my way. And when they work together, oh my goodness, the matrix combines and everyone benefits more, right?
Well, I certainly believe that everyone benefits when that person inside the body listens to this alignment, that aha, that truth that you talk about, that gut feeling. Um, Thank you for listening. Thank you for following that gut feeling. I think that, God, the angels, whatever you believe in, I think that they give you an applause and they're so excited when we step into our truth, when we step into our purpose, which is what you've done. Yeah.
Debbie, thank you. I'm very moved. You don't always get confirmation. Sometimes I know you must know this feeling. You work blind, driven by something that you don't necessarily understand, but you just do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I remember I studied 20 years ago now in sacred contracts with Carolyn Mace,
Mhm.
Dr. Carolyn Mace in person. And I remember one day standing in her classroom. I love her to pieces. I think she's just made the most exceptional contribution to humanity. And she said one day, "What's the weather like out there?" And many of us put our hands up. We were in a not a very big group, but it was amazing to be there in person for several years coming back. And I got picked to talk, and she said, "What's up? What's the weather like?" And I said, "Well, I had this experience. I had this experience of teaching something that I wasn't expecting to teach. I was called forth. In other words, people said, 'Please, will you teach us this?'
Mhm.
I said, and against the odds, I just did what they asked and taught them what they wanted. And after they left, they all left full of their information and excited. And I was like, okay, what was that? And I was really in this place of complete mystery. I didn't know what to do with it. I'd worked so hard, delivered everything from my soul, and given them all the notes they needed, taught them everything I could think of, shared everything. And I just said, and I'm just standing there not knowing what to do. And I figured, looking at Carolyn, that you would tell me there was an archetype coming in. And she smiled and she said, I would. And which archetype was it? And I said, well, I think it was the archetype of the pioneer, the reluctant pioneer. And I don't want that archetype. I don't want to be a pioneer. Why would I want to do that? Pioneers get shot. And she laughed and she said to me, why don't you want to be a pioneer? I said, I don't know, but I don't think I've got a choice. I came in this lifetime with that archetype. And she said, and what does it do? I said, it pierces the dark to bring in the light. But as soon as the light is there for everyone, we have to move on and pierce some more dark. Otherwise, we're not being pioneers. And she said to me, she came up to me afterwards and she said, what was brilliant about that was that you accepted that you had an archetype that you didn't like and you got on with it anyway. Welcome to my world. And I honestly
Yeah.
I felt like I'd been ordained on that in that moment. I'll never forget it as long as I live. And it's like I'm lucky now. I'm in a team of pioneers, different types of pioneers, archetypes of the archetypes. But oh my goodness. So it's now a position where I receive love and we share respect for each other and give love to each other and work together as the most amazing team. So I thank you to God and all those angels because it's
Well,
not an easy
it's
place.
the mystery, as you say, it's so important, gutsy. It takes guts. It takes courage to listen to that voice and to be the only one. It feels like you're the only one. And then you realize, no, you're not the only one. I need to find the tribe of those pioneers to learn from, to walk with, right? To accompany us on that journey of being a pioneer, which can feel lonely, can feel scary. And as you say, you can kind of question yourself. Um, in that the truth and the information is not coming from a library. It's not coming from something that you can put your hands on, but yet it is something that it's a what I call a pull. It's a pull that you can't resist. It's so magnetic. I guess you can resist, but it's great when you don't. Yeah. Let's talk about you're a healer. I mean, there's no question about it. Healers come in different forms. And I do believe that from time to time, we're given the opportunity to test our healing abilities on ourselves. And you have had a recent healing journey. Can you share with that um, your healing journey that you've been going through?
Yeah. Well, I don't think of myself as a healer because I think each one of us has healing powers. And I think the
Mhm.
body, particularly with all I've learned about the fascia over the years, is a self healing mechanism if we can give it the opportunity, the right time and space. And if it is the right time and space, because there's an element that we don't have control over, right? I watched my father pass away a few years ago and I didn't want it to be his time. It wasn't what I wanted.
Yeah.
And it was the right thing at the right time for him. So, but as a facilitator, I have worked with a lot of people who have suffered with various diagnoses of cancer where they've had scars and surgeries. And one of the tasks I've been given as a manual therapist has been to assist them in avoiding or handling what's called tethering and cording. I'm sure you've come across it,
Mhm.
whereby the body is restricted post-operatively
Yeah.
because of the scarring and because of some of the understandings or misunderstandings about how to deal with scars. And I'm very privileged. I've been able to work with Jan Trawartha in the writing of her book Scars and about scars, and I teach it. I've learned a lot about it, and so when I had my shock, routine mammogram, and I was called back, I wasn't surprised to be called back, but I knew what was going on by the time I was on my third biopsy, and I was shocked to discover that I indeed had not just a diagnosis of breast cancer, but it was in the lymph nodes as well. So I had to have two surgeries effectively, a lumpectomy and a lymphectomy.
Mhm.
And I was very lucky. I got to meet my surgeon beforehand. And I asked him, this will make you laugh, I think. I said to him, please, may I have this under local anesthetic? Because I'd like to know what's going on. Well,
Yeah. I love it.
the poor man, his glasses fell off his nose. He put them back on again and he said, who are you exactly? And I said, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medic. I don't know a lot about medicine, but I know far more than I should about the human body. And I get to work. I'm very privileged to work with John Sharkey, who is a clinical anatomist, and he's the level that passes doctors to become doctors. He teaches brain surgeons advanced surgical techniques. So anyone out there who wants to follow John or get the opportunity to do dissection under him, you're in another world. Anyway, he specializes in certain fascial work, and my surgeon had heard of him. And so he proceeded to give me the anatomy of the surgery that he was about to perform in great detail, the nerves, the tissues, the everything. And I went, okay, you win. I'm done. I don't want to be there. Can you just put me out? And I don't want to play. And he said, that's more like it. He said, but what I will do for you, he said, because you're having the lymphectomy, he kept looking at me like I was bonkers. And he said, because you're having the lymphectomy, he said, I should put a drain in and keep you in hospital for several days. He said, but I think you know what you're doing. I think you'll be able to handle this. I'm going to see if I can send you home the same day. I'm not promising, but if I can, you just do a deal with me. you let me put you under completely. I look back on this conversation. I must. Poor man. He said, I'll let you let me put you out completely. He just put his head in his hands and he said, and I will see if I can send you home, but I don't want to see you back here with lymphedema, cording, or tethering. Is that a deal? So I said yes, because after he told me what was happening with my different nerves, and then I asked him, could you only take the two lymph nodes out, not the two that are unaffected? And he said, no, I have to take them all. And I said, why? And he said, well, why not? I said, because I want them. My body had them there in the first place. There's nothing redundant in my body. I want all of them. And he looked at me, put his head in his hands, and he said, look, Joanne, we don't have the equipment to see those lymph nodes
Yeah.
in the detail we'd love to.
Yeah.
And the truth is, if I have you back here to do this surgery again, you might lose the use of your right arm function
Oh,
because
okay, that's
failure.
that's it.
All right, you've got a deal. You take my lymph nodes out, whatever. So we did this. We did this whole bargaining thing. Poor man. I mean, he was so lovely. He was so respectful and delightful. And I don't pretend to have anything like surgical knowledge. I've no delusions of grandeur. I was at his mercy, let's face it. Anyway, he did the surgery very beautifully. And I came out very shocked because I don't know why, but I think all of us don't really get things till we're in them.
Yeah.
And I felt as if I'd been on a track of absolute dedication for the whole world. And this train was coming towards me with oncology written on the number plate.
Mm.
And I fell off that track. And I have to say, I fell into a pile of grace because the generosity of spirit of my friends, my colleagues, my family, my spiritual family, well, it was unbelievable. You couldn't make up the series of events. If I wrote a script, Debbie, and I sent it to you and I said, this is what happened to me, you'd
Wow.
say, no, even Hollywood would think you're nuts. But it happened. And I was like, okay, I get it. I had to stop. I had to press pause. I had to honor this body
Yeah.
rather than write about, worry about, learn to dissect, deal with everyone else's first. I had to learn to be what I would call selfish, but actually it was to empower myself.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I stand kicking if I have cording and tethering because I know how to avoid that.
Yeah.
So I actually felt a little bit trapped in my own training in that I wasn't going to get away with anything. And you've got
Right.
to think, I've got John Sharkey, I've got Dr. Wilbur Kelsick, I've got Dr. Paul, all these people on FaceTime looking at me, and they're all looking at my face. What's her complexion? How's she doing? Is she getting better? Is she well enough? Can she this? And I couldn't move. My whole right corner of my torso, I had a broken wing, and I couldn't let go of my arm.
Wow.
So I designed a series of micro movements. Some of it has been taught to me, some of it I put together, but I did it listening, tuning in to my own fascial matrix. Like at detail, you'd be proud of me. Let's put it that way. If I was in your school, you'd be proud of me.
Wow. Well,
Carefully.
you are that's why I say you are a healer. That's why I said you are a healer, and I agree. We we can have outside support, and that is so necessary to find those people that can work with us, to accompany us on the healing journey, whether it's a surgeon, a psychotherapist, whatever it may be. And yet, it is up to us to also, as you said, listen to your body, give that time and attention, let go of all of the other stuff, and be the being with the body is so very important. And yes, I am proud of you. I'm so happy that you're here.
Well, yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you. Thank you. And so what happened was I figured out like we can figure out the body. I have this thing that the body doesn't care about our intellectual processes. It's not biomechanical, it's bioemotional. And it's like it's all very well. I have this idea. But I gave myself time. Remember, I've got some of the most fabulous people around me. And they said it will take time. Fascia is the tissue of temporality, and let's let it take its time. So I
Yeah.
figured 12 months. My To my amazement, to my amazement, and I logged it daily because I had to hold myself on track and hold myself accountable and keep myself, because I was afraid. We're all afraid when something
Yeah,
like that happens. It's like,
yeah.
okay, is this it? And I was like, no, I don't think it is. And I did 12 minutes. I restricted myself very deliberately because I'd given myself a year. I restricted myself to 12 minutes a day of micro movements.
Beautiful.
That was my deal with myself. And
Mhm.
I made myself a chart with little hearts, and each level of color in the rainbow meant something. And, one red heart was me with a broken wing, not moving anything. And three red hearts, I got up to imagining the movements and feeling like I could maybe hold my arm, but I was up to here in painkillers. And my goal for the end of the year was three purple hearts going through the rainbow. Each level I made mean something else. It was almost like I was, I don't know what, giving myself this chart of progress, if you like,
Yeah.
playing a game. And the three purple hearts would be full weight bearing yoga that I was used to doing. And 12 minutes a day, no more. Because something deep, deep, deep inside me wondered if that's actually possible and meaningful. Because I think we often are capable of overtraining. I think it's
Yes.
quite common, actually.
Absolutely.
And so I thought, right, I'm not going to anybody. I'm not going to see anybody. I'm going to do this myself. I am going to see what happens 12 minutes a day for 12 months.
Mhm.
In 12 weeks, I was doing full weight bearing yoga, and no one is more amazed than I am. Nobody
Wow.
could tell which side I'd had my surgery. That was a transformation. Now, I don't know if I prayed for longer than 12 minutes a day every day, I can assure you.
Mhm.
So we could blame God for this miracle or any other miracle. But if, as I believe, every single one of us is divine, every single one of us animated heart first, the heart begins the process of the body's animation. The heart starts above the crown and animates the entire embryological sequence. And if every one of us starts with a spark of light, the divine light, then we are divine. And if that's the case, God did this.
Yeah. Beautiful. Just beautiful. I love the approach of less is more. And, I too believe that even a minute a day for someone who has never done anything, let's just breathe for a minute a day and then add 30 seconds the next day.
Yeah.
And let's just move for a minute today and then add 30 seconds the next day. The pleasure reward system in the brain that gets fed when we do things that are meaningful, important, measurable, and we would call it easy, but it's new, novel, and fascinating to the brain, which grows the brain. And then you talk about the heart and how we can inform our cells with heart energy, with the power of heart energy. And that's why I call you a healer, and that's why I teach everybody that you are a healer. Your body has that. You just need to know how to plug into it. That is natural. We are designed to use this heart and to absolutely facilitate healing. And this, you I find it fascinating that your passion for fascia, that then you would have an illness, right, or a disruption in your life that would put you face to face with how does this really work, right?
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
have that firsthand experience of this multi-dimensional body-wide communication system and learning to read it yourself, learning to work with it, and also learning to, in this third dimensional reality that we live in, time and space, right? How much time do I need? How much movement do I need? Can you define micro movements and maybe even show a micro movement for people that don't know what you're talking about?
Absolutely. So let's let's do something together now. This is so simple, and you probably have a different version of it with a different description. I don't think anything's new, but there's
Mhm,
lovely ways of putting it together, and we can all give each other ideas. Just imagine, for example, that you have a chalk coming out of your shoulders,
mhm.
and that chalk is just going straight out, so straight out to the sides at right angles to your nose, if you like. And there's a board on either side. And all you've got to do is draw a circle with your shoulders the size of a quarter, just a circle like that. And then draw it the other way. And immediately you tune in. I watched you do it. We both did. We went inside and we listened. And what I'm asking you to listen for is not the range, not the range at all, because it's only a quarter. It's actually quite hard to do it that small. But the quality of smoothness, whatever that is, that you can do that circle with. So maybe do 3 or 4 of them forward and 3 or 4 of them back. And if you tune right in, you'll find there's areas where it seems to jump.
Yeah.
And believe me, if you practice that tiny, 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 ridiculous micro movement, you can then go to something that we move on from there when that's smooth in a full circle in both directions. And it's like, are you kidding me? Why do I need to do that? I'll tell you in a minute. And then we just kiss the shoulder blades. Just imagine your shoulder blades kissing really slowly and sweetly. They just kiss and they give each other a hug.
Mm.
They come back. There you go. Look at your smile. So you
I
actually
love
completely changed your
I love kissing my shoulder blades.
exactly. Now that's the back of your heart. And what you've just done is animated the vagus nerve. You've lifted your spirits, you've lifted your breastbone, your heart got a bit more light, and you kissed your shoulder blades at the back of your heart, and you breathed better. You changed everything. So settle that down. Now you've got they're just waiting to kiss. Let them part. Let them move away. And here, this time, what we're going to do is we're going to imagine that the chalk on the end of our shoulders is going to make a spiral, a perfect spiral pattern that gets a little bit bigger now, and a little bit bigger, and a little bit bigger. And then we're going to go back the way we came and make it smaller and smaller. And these are really difficult movements to
Oh,
do.
yeah, I can feel the bump, 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 bump.
And the bit,
Yeah,
and if you had a drawing of it, it would be anything but a perfect spiral, right? You'd have two lines overlapping each other and then one line further
right.
apart. Just that exercise, if we could call it that, that little tiny weeny micro movement sequence literally transforms our ability to stay mobile in life. It feeds the body micro movement nourishment. And it tells this part of the body, the shoulders, which are super important that we mobilize them and keep them so they can do what we want them to do. It tells them, I want to use all of you. It's a ball and socket. I hate the word joint personally because I think the whole body is one piece, but it's a ball and socket. And what happens is, obviously, we all know we tend to be forward in the shoulders. We tend to have this is me on my computer, with the neck stuck and all this business, or the phone or whatever. But we tend, if we had an eye in the corner of each shoulder or that pencil tends to be forward. That's our tendency. What happens is one part of the shoulder joint gets used more than another. One's under stretch or tension, we should say, and the other's under compression. That's fasciategrity, is bringing that tension compression balance back into the body with this tiny circular movements. And you think to yourself, well, why am I even doing this? But what happens over time is cumulatively, and I call this a whispering campaign, your fascia whispers. And I want to turn everyone I work with into fascia whisperers because, my God, it transforms how you work. And you're whispering, I want the whole region of the shoulder to work. I want all of you to work. And then you start being able to make little side to sides, and you extend the arms. You can do all kinds of variations on that theme. But this is the pre to the movements. And when you feed the body with lots of pre, it's a bit like having a drink of water with a drop of lemon juice in the morning before you go for your coffee. That tells the body we're waking up, we love you, we're cleansing, we're getting it. They're whispers, but you're whispering so lovingly. I'm going to make a big leap now. I'm going to jump into my definition of fascia. For me, fascia is the interface of spirit in the matter of the body, and it's the organ of love, light, and sound.
Say that one more time so I can let it into my tissues. I felt it here, but now I wanna feel it here.
Fascia, and remember, every part of us is formed in fascia.
Yeah.
You asked me about chocolate. Chocolate is a liquid crystal matrix, and so is fascia.
Ah,
Hello.
perfect.
It's really gorgeous, and we all love fascia, and we all love chocolate, and some people
Yeah.
don't. It always has a very visceral response. They either hate it or they love it,
Mhm.
mostly. We are a liquid crystal matrix. There's no joints, there's no levers, there's no mechanics, there's no nothing like that. We've wrong metaphor. We'll talk about that in a minute. It is a liquid crystal matrix in varying degrees from soft to hard, soft matter. We're made of soft matter physics. Same as the cosmos. With inner cosmos, we just our skin is the interface between the outer and the inner cosmos. Our fascia is the interface of the matter of us, animated, heart first, by the spirit. It is the tissue of love, light, and sound.
Mm.
And I can deepen that in that we now know. I say we like I'm the scientist that found it out. In the
I
world,
do it too.
it's possible to find out. Fascia emits light. They're called biophotonic emissions, and it emits light. The moment of conception, there is a flash of light
Mm.
in the body. And to the extent that fascia is well and in good shape and working well, emits and transmits light. It is formed under tension throughout the body, like a violin or a cello or a drum skin. Everything in the body is under tension. So it communicates via sound resonance throughout the form. So we have the light and we have the sound. And it has such a subtle whispering awareness that it does most of its work, what we call autonomically. It
Mhm.
self organizes, which is what we did since we were embryos. We self organized into our own form. You are the architect that self organized the architecture to express yourself as the architect. It's like a Rumi poem or an Escher painting. It's all self organizing. And that's why it's so hard to see ourselves. But the tissue longs for us to love it back.
Mm.
It's trying to love us. My tissue just wanted to heal me. And when I realized that, I whispered to it. And as you said, because I was listening, I could
Yeah,
hear. And it was like, no, don't do that. That's too much. That hurts. That frightens me.
yeah.
And I didn't want to lose the use of my arm. So I didn't want to go back to that lovely surgeon who, thank God for him, thank God for him. And and I was just like, no, I need this arm because I won't be able to draw if I haven't got this arm, and I won't be able to do my work if I get to do it again, even, and all of those things. So I can't call that a journey of anything other than healing
Yeah.
because I am a more compassionate, more humble, more wondrous person than I was because I have a much bigger tolerance of mystery now and magic.
And I think that what's so beautiful about the mystery and the magic is it is not pain-free at
Not that
all.
side of us, absolutely not at all. But it's not supposed to be. It's not
Well, I
supposed to
think
be.
sometimes oh, magic, mystery, and, it's sort of like, do you wanna go on a journey of not of understanding and transformation? Put on your seatbelt, right? It's a journey, it's a personal journey, and, as George Leonard says, it has its ups and downs and plateaus where we think nothing's happening, but it is happening, it is happening. The, when you talk about a fascia and you talk about it in action and you talk
Mm,
about sound.
yes.
um I make the statement, everything is sound, everything has a sound resonance. Absolutely everything. There's a sound of healthy and a
Yeah,
sound of unhealthy.
yeah.
Um, is the sound of healthy fascia a hum, an ah? Um, and what is the sound of unhealthy fascia? If we were going to put on a record and hear it, what would it sound like?
Oh,
What would it sound
brilliant
like?
question. That's such a brilliant question, Debbie. Thank you. Okay, so I have to share something about a gift that I have. If it's a gift, it wasn't when I first had it, but it's become one. And that is a certain type of synesthesia where I have two senses that cross over.
Uh huh.
And it's going to answer your question quite accurately, I think. Um, the two senses I have that cross over are sound and touch. So when I touch somebody, I hear their tissue.
Yeah.
Now that I don't hear it saying, "Oh, hi, please could you do this to me?" It's not, doesn't, the body doesn't speak English.
Yeah.
And you said you only speak English, but that's not true. You speak fluent fascia, trust me, and archetypes. That's another conversation. So what it is that I can put my hands on someone, as I frequently do, and I've done that to thousands of people. I've had the privilege of working with them, and ask them to move, and I can literally hear what's going on with them, but I have to very quickly adapt to their dialect. And what I mean by that
Okay.
is everyone is somatically archetypally unique. So people are on a scale from fixed and strong, like a sort of Viking type, to very, very flexible and sinewy, like a dancer that would flow and fold, and or a contortionist even. So that's the range. We call it from fixed to flexy. And then you've got the different neurological types, which is ectomorph, mesomorph, endomorph. And
Mhm.
so I create a sort of a scale of that, but I instinctively pick it up. So, in other words, if you were working with a horse, or you were working with a dog, or you were working with a cat, they're very different qualities. But to me, they're different sound resonances. And
Mhm.
if I'm moving the tissue, or I get somebody to move to meet my movements, because in the training in structural integration, you move while your client's moving, very subtle movements. I can actually hear the change in the tissue, and I honestly couldn't tell you if I'm hearing hydration, or I'm hearing inflammation, or I'm hearing a particular illness. Because for me, a lot of the ways we work with the body is based in two things. And I am answering your question about sound. And those two things are: one, we work with postcodes. We work with the anatomy, but we learn the origins and insertions of the muscles, the placement of the bones, which is where, what's what. And of course, we need to know that, which nerve, which vessel, blah, 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 the names of all the parts. And you've done dissection, you've seen them, and they're kind of pretty much there. But I know one of the things that you saw in the lab with Gil when you looked at one cadaver from another is no two cadavers are the same.
Nope.
And there's this realization that, oh my goodness, if everybody's face is different, why did I assume everybody would be the same on the inside? They're not. They're as different on the inside as the outside. Some people have their liver on the left. It's rare, but it's sometimes. Some people don't have the muscles that they're designated to have in the anatomy books. And that was a real shock to me when I first learned about the body. But fast forward to the basis on which we learn about the body is that we inherited the knowledge of anatomy, 20th century anatomy,
Yeah.
from our forefathers during the Industrial Revolution. And their highest ability to understand something was based on the Industrial Revolution's machines. So we learned mechanics.
Yeah.
But even the fascia is being taught as having mechanoreceptors. Sends me personally nuts, because they should be called at least sensory receptors, if not antennae,
Yeah.
because they are sound radar experts. And
Mhm.
I'm talking at the micro level that we can't even imagine. So, given that they're under tension, what do I mean by that? Well, turn your hand round and open your fingers and look at the tendons in the back of your hand. They look like the spokes of an umbrella in a way, right?
Mhm.
Well, that umbrella's always up. We don't deflate when we lie down. We are what's called a pre-stiffened architecture. So we feel our bones grow faster than our tissue inside us from the embryo, and we stay tensioned. So if you imagine going into this tissue, we pull, and because the bones go faster, the tissue is pulled, and it's kind of tensioned. I don't want to say stretched for very specific reasons, but it's tensioned like a drum skin.
Mhm.
So when I once worked on a cadaver that was a woman in her 80s, and her diaphragm, I was expecting a muscle with a central tendon. It was an almost transparent, I mean, it was opaque in the middle
Wow.
where the tendon would be, but it was almost a transparent dome across the entire thorax. And it was tensioned, and it had breathed her for 80 years, and there were dots of red muscle protein. But it was a fascial, it started off as the septum transversum in the embryo. It formed at around T12, where under the heart sits on it. And I thought to myself, oh my God, and it's a drum skin. So of course it makes a sound with every heartbeat.
Yeah.
We go back to the embryo, and I will never forget the day that a very dear friend of mine Professor Darrell Evans, he's an embryologist and amazing, amazing man. He said to me, do you know the heart starts above the crown? He was my client.
I love that.
And he said it to me, and I said, we call him Prof. We all call him Prof. And it's like, excuse me? And he said, you will love knowing this. He basically means because you're a nutcase, because I'm not a scientist and I didn't go to medical school. But he said, you will love knowing the heart starts above the crown.
Yeah.
And I said, so we're heart-centered. And that was the beginning of my journey of anatomy and working with Jaap van der Waal. And I mean, Jaap has just been, he's such a dear friend. I love him to pieces. But between them, Prof and yeah, I mean, oh my God. But the heart, just do this with me. The heart starts here above the crown, and it feeds what's going to become the growing brain. So the
Mhm.
growing brain pushes, as it grows, the heart down in front of where it's going to be. And
Wow.
so the heart it's syncopating the rhythm. There's your sound wave. It's syncopating the rhythm. All this is all in the round. So we really can't imagine it because we have to be in 5D to see it in 4D.
Mhm.
Another thing. So this heart is beating where it's going to be. And while it's doing that, it's growing the brain, but it's sending circulatory vessels out to the back of where the brain's growing,
Yeah.
which designates the pathways that the vertebrae are going to form in
Wow.
the embryonic somites form the spine. I'm fast tracking the embryology here, so just
Yeah.
making it so it's accessible on a podcast. But basically, imagine the heart's above the crown, the brain grows because the heart's growing, the brain grows behind it, and partly it's a metabolic thing as well, but it comes down to sit in that place, let's say opposite the fourth chakra,
Mhm.
while the heart is sending vessels back to the back of the growing brain. And that is folding back on itself to form the spine down the back and round the sides. Remember, this is all in the round, so there's not really a front, back, or sides, but let's pretend it's a tube. And it wraps around the sides, around the heart to incorporate this heart
Mm.
that's pushing, it's pushing, pushing, pushing down, and everything's folding between this brain and this heart. So the spine's going down the back, and as the heart becomes opposite the where the spine's got to, the septum transversum forms the diaphragm.
Mm.
And then it starts growing down, down, down into a tail, wraps around the side to incorporate the gut, draws the gut in under the heart. And then these buds form, lung buds on the inside, arm buds on the outside, and the face unfolds up from the heart.
Mm.
And then the lower limb buds form, and the tail incorporates, and the gut incorporates. And by 8 weeks of this unbelievable dance, all in a liquid crystal matrix, the fascial matrix, this dance is complete. And you have a walnut size of a walnut inside a walnut shell,
Mm.
whole, complete you. Now, you were whole and complete from the outset. You were a complete, whole, unicellular being with a placenta around you that did your functioning for you. And you gradually grew, taking those abilities as you went, as you needed them. I mean, it's beyond miraculous.
It's
And as
beyond.
you incorporated all those things from the placenta, you then grew into it until you didn't need it anymore. I mean, oh my God. And the whole thing is orchestrated by the syncopated rhythm of the heartbeat and the sound of the mother's heartbeat.
Sound of the mother's heartbeat. Yeah.
And those two heartbeats and those sounds and those rhythms of that fluid matrix in that gravity free environment is, in my opinion, and it's only my opinion, the dance of the inner cosmos.
Yeah.
And there's something in the
Absolutely.
outer cosmos called the God chord, and it's the sound of nature. And we don't even know we resonate to it because we can't hear it. We are it. And when you hear that sound interrupted, that's when you know something's wrong.
Yeah, I can
You can read that.
remember, well, I mean, it's hard for me to not just sit for a moment and want to give thanks to this magnificent gift of a body.
Hello.
I
Amen.
yeah, I mean, it's just let's don't take it anything else. Let's just take that in for a moment. Um, I can remember moments of crying and hitting a certain sound. A certain sound came out of me and sobbing. And I've always felt that when that sound came out, it linked with that God sound that you're talking about. And that's when the floodgates open up and there's a depth, a moan, a sound of truth that is not contained. It's one with. Um, that primordial sound that we all have that connects us to that, God force, whatever you might someone might wanna call it. It is a coherence with
Yes.
that inner cosmo and the outer cosmo, and I can hear it, and I can sense it. And I track my voice, my posture, walk, and voice. Those are 3 things that I track to measure myself. Am
Mm.
I connected? Is my inner cosmos connected to the outer? And I can hear it in my voice when it is when it isn't, right? And I can see it in my walk when it isn't, and I can see it in my posture when it isn't. When I'm not my inner matrix is not connected, to the outer matrix. Some people say that the fascia is a hidden organ. Do you think it's a hidden organ?
I love that question. I think the problem we have is that we can't see our own eyeballs. And I think people don't realize the fascia isn't a thing. And John Sharkey has it right. He says it's a process
Mhm.
because the fascia is bound. It's a liquid crystal matrix. It's made of, we are made of bound water. So basically, we're made of 3 things: connective tissue, cells, and the in between. But every cell is made of connective tissue with this bound fluid inside it, full of organelles that are bound by connective tissue at different thicknesses. Think of an orange. You've
Mhm.
got the skin of the orange, then you've got the covering of each of the segments, and then you've got the little tiny droplets inside the segments. And each of those covers are different densities of the same stuff. So I call it our access to it, our architecture, because everything in us is made of it. Our nerves, our blood vessels, our organs are wrapped in it, and our muscles, myofascia, and we've got all these different names for these different types of collagen and all that. I mean, give me a break. The body knows itself as one piece. But what's not been understood until recently, relatively recently, the significance of the fascia. Fascia's always been there since time began. The significance of the fascia and the fact that the fascia is sensory. Now, what that means is we lift ourselves out of the limitations of the language of the Industrial Revolution and we give ourselves the language of the technological revolution that we're in now, and that's artificial intelligence. So, what am I talking about? It's simple. If you pick up your smartphone, your smart tablet, or your smart computer, you
Mhm.
have a liquid crystal display, which is what we're looking at each other through.
Yep.
Exactly. If you open that, and you don't need to do it now, but if you go into settings, you'll see there's settings called sounds and haptics.
Mhm.
And the haptics means the feedback that you get depending on what you do. So if you press a voice note in a certain place in a certain way, the feedback is a ringtone to ring your friend that's on speed dial. If you swipe twice or you scoop or spread, you see a picture smaller or bigger, you have a feedback interface. That's haptics. And a man called Martin Grunwald has done research on the fact that the fascia is the largest sensory organ of the body and it communicates in haptics. In other words, haptics are the feedback. So every tap, every swipe, every press, the pressure, the warmth, the heat, the state, the changing emergent properties of how you touch it in that moment. And you'll love this because it's different moment to moment, gives you feedback on your phone, and your phone grows into your own. And you know what I mean by that, Debbie? If
Yeah.
you and I we were in a conference together and you dropped your phone and it broke into 1,000 pieces, and I said, it's all right, I've got a spare one here. And I gave you a new phone.
No.
And I said, just put your code in there. That phone wouldn't know you yet. So you'd be going, oh my God. And you'd have to go back and work out how each program works. Well, this is your haptic interface, everything, every cell to cell. And we just didn't have the language for it. It's not that it's new. We haven't invented anything that we aren't already. And so what we're learning, and I call it bioemotional intelligence rather than artificial intelligence, you already have an internal feedback system. And if you go in and you touch in, to use the words you use to describe your beautiful programs and podcasts, go in, listen, you will hear what it's telling you because that's how it's communicating with itself the whole time. And we drown it out with these vicious exercise routines and these running after trying to be Olympic stars. No, come back. Just circle your hands and your ankles and your shoulders and your legs and wave and whatever, micro movements. Do you say Nia or Naya? How do you prefer to?
Nia, Nia,
Nia.
Nia.
Your Nia movements, do those and ask your body. And if you don't feel 100% that day, do less. Do
Exactly.
12 minutes instead of 20. But know yourself and listen in. And it's always different. It is your inner haptic perception. It's your proprioceptive or interoceptive or extraceptive awareness. And the next book that I'm working on that you mentioned before is MMIA. It stands for Myofascial Magic in Action, as you said. But I was in a meeting with someone in the spiritual movement where I'm ordained. And they said, what does MMIA stand for? And I said, the movement of magical inner awareness.
That's great.
And he said, where did that come from? I said, oh, I don't know. It
It's
stands for
just
Myofascial Magic in Action. But it
yes.
just came out of my mouth.
Yeah.
And what it is it's daring to listen in and tune in and love what's in there because it served you every day of your life
Yeah.
and for many months before that. And if we
Beautiful.
would just take the time to honor that and listen in. And as you said, it's not pain free. But you know what? The hardest thing to walk on is ice. It's so smooth, there's no traction. And I think of those pains as knots in the net. You try climbing a smooth rope, you can't get anywhere. But you put knots in that rope and you can climb.
Yeah.
And the truth is, those difficulties, they make us stronger. They really, really do.
Right.
I'm not embracing them. I'm not loving them. I'm not saying go look for trouble. But what I am saying is don't worry because you're greater than you think and you'll find out through practice, through doing.
And those knots give us an opportunity to pause, to go in, to look around, and then make a decision. How can I work with this?
Yes.
And how can I work with my body to move, climb a little bit more back up into that space of heart that is not only here, but where it came from. Well, Joanne, this has been fantastic. And I know we have a part two conversation that I can't wait to dive into. But for now, I'm going to leave you all with this from Joanne. Human beings, we self organize. Despite the culture of biomechanics, there is nothing mechanical about you at all. We as embryos, we form ourselves Heart first, heart first. So we are heart centered beings right from the moment we are conceived. We begin whole and complete and generate our parts from within our wholeness. We remain whole always. Fascia is the largest sensory organ of the body, which changes everything that we thought we knew about biomechanics movement. Fascia invites a new language. In part two, we're going to talk about that language a little more of proprioception in the realm of awareness, perceiving things from the outside in and also inside out. The movement of magical inner awareness. Who doesn't want more knowledge about that? Thanks, everybody, for listening. To find out more about our guest, go to myofascialmagic.com website or Yoga Fascia Anatomy and Movement 2 book published by Handspring. And please make sure that you listen to Joanne Avison's podcast at myofascialmagic.com. Is there anything else, Joanne, you'd like to share with our guests? Something coming up, an event that they could participate in?
Well, the Move Better, Feel Better Summit, the Feldenkrais Summit, is going to be on in May. And that's a free thing to just see the beginning of, I think. And I'll be speaking, and Neil Thies will be speaking. And generally speaking, I've got a new book coming out called Myofascial Magic in Action. So that's the biggest thing I'm looking out for. And there's a course in it as well for teachers that are already established. It's not a movement protocol. It's not another way of moving. It's joining the dots so that people have the fascia-informed awareness to read bodies and see how to put the micro movements together in the practice that they already have. So it's not an alternative practice. If you're working already with your Naya work and your whatever it is that you do, we're just pointing out how the fascia actually wants to join the little dots in between. So we teach people, we teach practitioners how to do that.
I love that. And by the way, the Feldenkrais event, don't miss it. It's fantastic. Thank you so much again. And if you'd like to find out more about me, please visit my new online magazine, Awakening Body and Life, at debbierosas.com. And you can browse and read. You can also sign up to receive weekly inspiring body and life wisdom every week. You can also find me on Facebook by searching Nia, on Twitter or Instagram at Nia Technique, and on nianow.com. And if you want to get a taste of Nia movement, please go to niaondemand.com. 2 weeks free. You can have an experience of movement, short, longer workouts, as well as therapeutic movement meditations. Thanks again. And don't forget, this is our time to get in and have a conversation about becoming better human beings. Thanks again. I'm Debbie Rosas, and I'll see you next week.